Are you concerned about all this corruption being misgendered as conspiracies? Well, don't you worry. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation as we talk with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB Film podcast. Today I have the brave warrior, Carol Woods. Now, Carol Woods is somewhat of a whistleblower, and she's been whistleblowing on the Lancashire Council with regards to social services and childcare. So we are here to learn more about the experience and the story that Carol wants to share with us. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Carol.
Hi, good morning, at last.
Yeah, third time lucky. So it's got to be worth it.
Yes.
So let's start at the beginning. What made you blow the whistle on the social services and childcare in this council?
Because I'd had, first of all, let me go back. I had the same post some years earlier when we were based in Winkley Square. And that was a marvellous team. But of course, the work's very stressful. And after, a while, I decided to return to teaching. I am a qualified, experienced teacher as well as a social worker.
Okay.
And then, of course, it's what I said, commute between professions. And I then returned to Preston. And this was a different office. Mostly, yes, generally speaking, different people. There was just one person that I worked with who had also been in Winkley Square, somebody that I liked, respected her work. She was great company, great sense of humour. And we were asked at first to undertake assessments of a young mother with a baby, partner, because there was some suggestions that there might be something doubtful about the partner. We were asked by our manager, Katrina Pennington, to undertake a series of visits, home visits, assessments, draw up a final report as to what we thought. So that's what we did. We did a series of 6 assessments, visits. They were nothing but cooperative. The young mother had her mother living nearby for support. We were certain that the young mother had every ability to protect her child should the need arise.
Yeah.
And because it was just so cooperative as well, it was hiding nothing. And we were both level 3 social workers, so, we'd had some experience. And we drew up our final report, handed it to Katrina. She was happy with it. The whole thing was filed. Katrina was then moved to Burnley office to cover up a scandal there. And there was a little bit of toing and froing of other managers. And meanwhile, the young mother had received a call from reception downstairs. Our offices were on the upper floor. That this young mother, I'm not going to name any clients' names. I might give you an initial, but I won't name the clients. Was in reception with the partner. Would I go down and see if they'd put them in an interview room? I went down, yes. The young mum was absolutely distraught. And I was really puzzled. I said, what's the matter? And she said, oh, please don't take her off me, Carol. Please don't take her off me. I said, I've no intentions of taking her off you. I had no idea what she was talking about. So I sort of settled her down and reassured her. And they left, and I went to speak to my other colleague, Karen Moore. And I said, what on earth is going on? Karen knew nothing about it either. And we just left it at that. Then reception was told if this young mum comes in to ask to see me, she was to be told I was not available, and I was not to be told that she'd been in asking for me. And then everything seemed to be okay. Then I was finally assigned another manager because in the interim, because of other things that I'd kicked up a fuss about, racism and supporting a black social worker, well, social work assistant, etc., I wasn't very popular with management. And the managers who were assigned our team to split up between them to have a list of social workers. And I will just add that I have the highest caseload of anybody, and neither would manage me. So eventually, I had no manager for a number of weeks. Well, management usually involves supervision sessions once a week, so that you can bring them up to date with what your clients are up to, where your cases are, etc., what's going on. And eventually, one of the managers went on holiday, and when she returned from holiday, the area team manager had placed my name on her list of social workers. So she wasn't delighted, but she was stuck with me. Now, that was Pat Allen. And it was, we sort of settled down. I wasn't impressed with her. I knew I'd come across her in the past somewhere, but I couldn't think where. And I just felt that she didn't really have any common sense. Anyway, I can be pleasant to anybody and get along with people. I don't cause a fuss for nothing. But then one of the senior legal reps from County Hall came across to the office, Beverly Cullen, and she asked me to alter the information on that baby's file because they were going to seek a court action to remove the child. Well, why?
I was going to say, but there's no grounds to do this.
No whatsoever. But it was such a surprise because nothing had been discussed. If they'd been saying to me, well, we're still concerned, whatever you say, nothing had been discussed. And also, Karen, neither had been approached. Nothing had been mentioned to me in supervision sessions. It all seemed to be very, secret almost. And I was furious. I said, it's not right. That's tampering. It's illegal. And I said, I will not alter that file or any other if it comes to that. I went to the area manager, Tony Bradshaw, and told him in no uncertain terms I would not alter anybody's file for anything. And he said, you were making enemies. Well, I said, I'm not here to make friends.
But you're there to protect your clients.
Yes, but via the grapevine, I heard that LCC were applying to court to remove this baby behind everybody's back almost. I was really worried for this young mum, and I got her a solicitor that I trusted, and I said she would need some assistance on legal aid, which she got. I was worried sick all that time, wondering what on earth is going on. Why are they taking this baby? And will they actually be successful? And then I got a letter from the solicitor. I'm going to hold it up and see just to show you, because I think people will say she's making things up or she's embroidering facts or whatever. Now then, the only reason I got this letter, the reception staff knew there was something going on that wasn't right because of whispers and events, and they liked me and they trusted me. So I think that this particular day, my manager, Pat Allen, wasn't in work, so they gave me the letter that was coming to me anyway. Pat Allen never saw this letter. And this is from Forbes Solicitors. I'll just read you and then I'll show you.
Okay.
It was Alison Mellin. She's a good man. She's a good person, Alison. I'm not allowed to say a good man anymore, am I? It's not PC. At Blackburn County Court on the 26th of October 2000, His Honour Judge Blake dismissed the application by the Lancashire County Council for a care order in respect of, and obviously the baby's name's covered. That's the letter.
Okay.
Can you see it?
I can see a little bit.
Is that enough?
I can see you're showing the address and the telephone number.
Right, can you see that?
Hold it back a little bit further. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
that's fact. Now then, at around a similar time, I had another child. This little boy, he was, well, he wasn't that little, but he was very young. He was, 12? And there were some sort of concerns from school coming in. Oh, by the way, nobody ever mentioned that child, baby LF, to me again. Nobody ever suggested, well, this is what we tried and we failed. It was never mentioned again, which is absolutely outrageous when you think I'm the named social worker and they were going to pursue matters, in my name. Had somebody altered that baby's file to give them the confidence to go to court? It's a good question, isn't it?
It is a good question. So can I ask, obviously we know that as far as you're aware and as far as you're concerned, that there was no danger for this child.
None whatsoever.
And the parents were perfectly fine and normal. Do you have a reason why you think that they may have wanted to take this child anyway?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I was so confused with all that because that was the first time in my years of any profession I come across anything like that. But to ask me to alter a file in favour of the local authority, those were her exact words. Would I alter the file in favour of the local authority? It's absolutely outrageous. But this child, this boy, child MB, it was just sort of a few concerns coming in from school that he was no trouble whatsoever at school, but they were a bit concerned about just little things and thought, well, it might warrant a home visit. So I was assigned the case and I went along to visit. And I was actually quite horrified. He lived with his paternal grandparents. He didn't see his mum or his dad. His mum and his dad were actually separated anyway. But oh dear me, I realised at that visit there was an awful lot of work needing to be done. And I was actually concerned for this child. So eventually I asked if we could house him in a children's unit so that I could deal with him separate to the family and deal with the grandparents and just work with it to make it a viable concern that he could live at home.
Yeah.
This child absolutely thrived because I mean I won't tell you what had been said and things, but anyway, this child thrived in this children's unit. The grandparents were coming round to my way of thinking. It was hard work, a bit of a slog, but we were getting there. Pat Allen, each supervision session, said to me, send him home. No, I said, that will happen in the future, but we're not near that yet. So again, another supervision session, send him home. No, he was doing well at school. He was happy. He was thriving. Grandparents were definitely coming round to my way of thinking. But we were not there yet. And after a third instruction to send him home, and I refused, again, nothing else was said. And I had a Friday off, which Pat Allen would have known about, obviously. I returned to work on the Monday and nobody said a word to me. I then get a call from Preston Royal Hospital Infirmary. Was I aware that child MB was in intensive care? Pat Allen had sent him home and it hadn't lasted the weekend. I was absolutely furious. Now, when I really kicked up a stink about that, it was also the same time that I'd blown the whistle on the other matter, the other big matter. And I was just told, well, basically, you're out. But when it came out later, as time went on, obviously I pursued matters. I didn't drop anything, I pursued matters. I was told I had made up the case of child MB. Had they altered all his files? Have they destroyed them?
How did this child end up in intensive care?
Because he tried to kill himself, because the breakdown hadn't worked, and after 3 days he'd just given up.
And how old was this child?
12.
12.
And because I was forced out at that point, I never knew what happened to that child. I mean, with any luck, he'll be a good young man now.
It just concerns me when you hear about all these grooming gangs and
how
rife paedophilia is, and even more sinister when you go down like the organ harvesting and that. But I imagine at that age, just probably too old. Well, I say that, but it's horrible. But I know, like, I was told a long time ago that social services have a quota of how many children that they should be taking from families. And I've been told that by various different sources. And so it does make you wonder why they try to take a perfectly normal child out of the care of a family, and why they would go to such extremes to remove a child from a family.
I know.
On no evidence, on no basis. It really is scary. So
yes, I know that. I say, and if that wasn't bad enough, then we come to the actual whistleblowing, because whilst all that was going on, I had 4 young boys in Fylde Community School, which is near Blackpool. It's Fylde, obviously, and that was a home for disturbed adolescent boys. And these boys were sort of 12, 13, 14. Now, four of the clients were mine, and it was a large site, 134 acres. And some of the residential staff actually lived in houses on the site with the families. There was a working farm on the site where some of the boys, as they grew older, helped out. They loved working on the farm. There was a school on the site, which actually was very successful in having the boys achieve results. So it was all fairly steady. And then word came around that they were going to close this children's home, this boys' home. And because, I have 4 clients there, and I thought it was wrong. I thought they did such a lot of good work. The residential staff were impressive. Management, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, no cause for concern. And there was a big public meeting one night. Parents were there, staff were there, staff families. And I went along expecting to walk in and see lots of field social workers, sort of support everything. I was the only field social worker to attend. The next day, I'd said to Karen Moore again, I said, I can't understand it. Where was everybody? She said, we all knew to stay away. But at that meeting, when they talked about what they were going to do, I stood up and said, you can't do that. It's illegal. And they took me to one side and said, yes, you're right. Keep your mouth shut. Are you for it? And I say, it was 3 days later when Tony Bradshaw, the area manager, actually wrote that to me in a letter. Well, of course, the last thing I was going to do was keep my mouth shut, because we're talking about children's lives. Doreen Pollitt at the time was the chair of the Social Services Committee, which I believe was disbanded not long after I left. And she said, we're not keeping that site open just because some boys pass exams. But it's illegal to close a working farm aside from anything else. I mean, the whole thing was wrong. There's nothing right about any of it. And I just continued to fight that. And as I say, I was forced out of work, but that was okay. I went back to teaching yet again. And I do enjoy it was teaching adult non-readers. I love that. I really do like that.
Very rewarding.
But I wrote, I mean, I have lots of pages here of newspaper articles I had published. This was, so it was, you know, a cause for local concern. There's that one. Can you see that?
Just hold it up a little bit higher. I can see the building.
Yeah. Well, it was the Lancashire Evening Post, the Blackpool Gazette, the Lancaster Citizen. I mean, so many of the northern papers published my concerns. They had photographs, they sent reporters down, and it was public opinion. This house, this home should not be closed. Bob Gower was the children's residential manager at the time, and he said, well, I don't see why we should provide houses for residential staff. They can all go and find somewhere and pay their own mortgages. Also, yes, okay, Mr. Gower, that's absolutely fine. And one of my letters on the 21st of April 2001, see, there's nothing wrong with my memory. I wrote to the Social Services Committee and I said, if you go ahead and complete the plans that you've got, I said, we have no field social workers, we have no foster parents, you've got all these boys to put in the community. I said, I'm telling you, something will happen that will attract media attention. They carried on, they closed the site, they closed everything on the site, the boys were just dispersed everywhere. And Bob Gower in an email actually admitted he'd no idea where these boys were, because of course we'd no foster parents, a few field social workers to keep track of them. And two of them recruited a teenage gang and murdered a pensioner. That was in Nelson. I wrote and told them, that is exactly what I warned you about. And any death that occurs as a result of public authority interference is corporate manslaughter.
Yeah.
I know enough law. So, of course, all hell broke loose. They then decided, because it was illegal, to try and legalise the closure and then hide the murder of Sheila Bridge. This is one. I mean, there were, look, children face death charge. That's one newspaper article. There were so many. I've got a selection. This is Sheila Bridge in Nelson, Lancashire. So to legalise it, they needed to employ somebody to take the matter to the High Court. Who do you think they employed? Sherry Blair.
Oh, really?
She took the matter to the High Court on behalf of Lancashire County Council. She forgot to tell the court the site had already been closed. The Secretary of State opposed the closure on the same legal grounds that I had. They did not win the case. I said, Sherry Blair is party to a corporate manslaughter and she has committed perjury.
She's as bad as her husband, the war criminal.
And who is one of their best friends? Falconer, who was Justice Minister. So, of course, I go to an employment tribunal for the dismissal, my unfair dismissal. I also discover that my manager, Pat Allen, worked with a false CV and claims to qualifications that didn't exist, which honestly anybody should have known. And I then remembered where I knew her from. She'd been a cleaner in a children's home. And the next minute, she's manager child protection. Anyway, so that's an aside. So I went to the tribunal. Everything was fine. And then I got the 3-day hearing. Peter Russell was the chair. The lay members were Barnes and Nichols.
Mm-hmm.
LCC had a barrister, Tanya Veronica Griffiths, representing them. I proved without doubt witness statements had been fabricated, signatures forged, and it just went on. And I was told, you were getting people struck off, you were getting people sent to prison. I said, I don't want that. That's not what I'm here for. But the matter of child MB came up, and apparently I've made it all up. They then said I had won and I would go to a remedy hearing. Okay, fine. I didn't really want anything else. I certainly didn't want money. I just wanted some sort of, I don't know, exposure of how bad things could be. And it was also, my clients were involved. These were vulnerable children. They needed something. And then the remedy hearing was changed. I had lost my case. I knew nothing then about, this sort of court document. But it didn't look right to me. Anyway, I appealed to the Employment Appeal Tribunal in London. And things had started to fit into place then. And the judge, I'm not sure I know his name fully. It was Muck something. I don't want to say a name because I might get a wrong name in.
Okay.
And he talked about anything and everything except
why you were
the
there.
matters were. And I said, you will not sacrifice me on the altar of your corruption. That's the title of my book, Altar of Corruption, which I daren't publish because I refuse to change names, dates, places.
Well, if it's factual, I don't think you should have to change names, dates and places.
Well, I don't think I should. Anyway, things went from bad to worse. After 2 or 3 years, there was a researcher who looked into my case, a really good man, Mike Ryan. And he found, I've still got his email, there were absolutely no cases within the Employment Appeal Tribunal with LCC named as respondents or applicants. I started to learn about false court documents. Now, when a crime has been committed against a person, that person has to report it to the police in the area. Well, the first crime was I found that the first false court document issued to me was from the Employment Appeal, not the Appeal Tribunal, prior to that, from the Manchester Employment Tribunals, Peter Russell. So I found the nearest police station was Bootle Street, Manchester. So I went to Bootle Street and reported the matter of what I believed was the matter. And I was assured that I would have a visit. So it was a DS Andrew Rigby came and a DC Steve Smith came to see me at home. So we talked about this and that and what I felt was the crime. And I showed him certain documents and Rigby laughed. He said he'd never seen as much evidence. So when they left, everything was absolutely fine. And I was going to hear from him. After about 3 weeks, I got a letter from him. If he ever saw me again, he would arrest me. So I got the next train to Manchester, walked in and said, right, you bastard, arrest me.
Get on you, girl.
They had a Sergeant White physically throw me out of the station before anybody else heard what was going on. Now, let's be honest. If I could suggest that was in any way sexual, it'd be headlines of the newspapers every day for a month. Sadly, there was nothing sexual in it. It was just aggression and anger.
Can I ask how old you were at the time?
Me?
Yeah.
52.
52, okay.
So I thought, well, I'm not standing for that. I'll find out who his inspector is, which I did. Obviously, I returned home. His inspector was Mark Bell. Now, I did have some correspondence with him, but mostly it was phone calls. Mark Bell was a liar. I told him he was a liar, and he actually admitted he was a liar. You see, within all this, some people instructed really enjoy it because they feel important. They feel like they're part of something. It's a bit sad, really. One or two of them do not enjoy it, but they still do it. They don't say no. So I then reported matters to Chester House, which is the professional standards. Well, not a great deal happened, except I had a DS Brian Davis and a Sergeant Hines be mentioned in name, and I pursued the matter. And things were getting really heavy for me at home. Like I refer to them as the Gestapo. They would park outside my house and just sit there, just to intimidate and harass. Other things had started to happen, which this is why it's big and it's complicated, because there's lots of other things going on as well. I upset an awful lot of people. And my brother had just moved house, and he said, look, I've got a spare room. Come and stay with me for a couple of weeks. He said, because they don't know where I am. They won't know where you are. He said, you'll get some, relaxation. Yes. So I thought, good idea. So I went to my brother's, and things went a bit quieter. And yes, I enjoyed the relaxation. And then one night he said, there's somebody outside. And as he looked, I mean, you can smell police, believe me, you can smell them.
Does it smell like bacon?
And he went out with his digital camera. The big black car. There's a driver, quite a big man, not somebody you'd pick a fight with. And the passenger, another man, he was on his laptop. I would put money on that being CS Brian Davis and Sergeant Hines. My brother took quite a few photographs. He was taking photographs of them, photographs of the car. Of course, they saw him, leapt out of the car and attacked him. Took his camera off him and thought they deleted all his photographs. And then he got his camera back. When he took his camera into work, because there were 4 very dark, well, they didn't look like pictures, they were very dark screens, but he has very sophisticated equipment at work. And these 4 pictures were brilliant. The car, the license plate, and these 2 clowns. So that was as far as I got with Greater Manchester Police. But I did receive this because at the time my sister was also very supportive, and she lives in Shaw near Oldham, and I'd spent a weekend with her. And I then received this. It went to her house and she forwarded it to me. At the time, my house was called Beechroyd. When I bought it, I changed the name to Beechroyd, which was a family house name, and I liked it anyway. After a while, I changed the house name to Cherry Trees, because I thought with the male intersection and all the rest of it, I thought if I can confuse them with the house name. But it was obviously the name, my name, not the house name. So there's this, can you see this?
Nope. Raise it up higher. Yes, I can see that.
Right, so that's my sister, Greater Manchester postcode here, postmark. And this is one letter. We had all sorts of malicious communications. Right, have a look at that.
Moving around, Ari, I will know where you are, and no matter where you move to, every dog has its day. And who do you think sent that?
I think DS Andrew Rigby sent that. And the sad fact is, they do know where you are whenever they need you. But the interesting thing, this is how, my battery's running low. Just a second. Let me get it plugged in. This is just how it sort of always wheels within wheels.
It's amazing just how much corruption there is. Basically, the
Just,
world runs on corruption.
doesn't it just? I'm just
And the
trying-
police are very much the police, the education system, social services, even the NHS to a certain extreme, are all in each other's pockets.
Yes, yes. I mean, but it's about covering for each other. Now, apparently, how on earth did they know my brother's address? Because I certainly wasn't using a computer from there, sending emails from his address. I did not have a mobile phone at the time. I don't like them anyway. I've sort of mine's hardly ever on because I do not leave it on. And we found out that it was a girl I went to school with, actually, Jackie Downing. And she'd seen my brother and she'd become friends with my brother as they were a bit older, and that the paths crossed more. And Jackie and my brother became quite friendly. And he bumped into Jackie and she said, "Oh, did those police officers find you the other night?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "What on earth did you tell them where I lived for?" She said, "Well, they're nice people."
This is
But
the
this
thing.
is-
So many people are so clueless.
Aren't they just? Aren't they just? Anyway, so that was how they got to my brother's house. I don't see my brother or my sister anymore. They'd had so much harassment, they just knew it's just better to have nothing to do with me. So that's
Which is
all.
really, really sad.
Yes, but then there are friends like Karen Moore distanced herself at work. She said it's a risk being seen with you, so she wasn't. And then slowly, one by one, others, they don't like doing it, but they still do it. But and they talk the way around it. But basically, the message is, I don't want to know you. Anyway, so that's okay. Then I lost my teaching job. Because two from the legal department of LCC, Laura Sales and Ian Young, who's the deputy head of legal services, Ian Fisher was the head of legal services, came into work with a flourish and served me with more false court documents just to, humiliate me, which they didn't because they're not good enough. But anyway, I was shown the door. I ended up painting and decorating to, earn enough to live on. That's absolutely fine. I love doing it. And friends knew, my work was good enough.
I love
But-
your spirit, by the way.
Sorry.
I said I love your spirit.
And this particular day, now then, I will name her. Why not? I was working for a friend. I was finishing off a kitchen area, and I only had the morning. I knew I'd be able to finish it in the morning. So I'd gone round. Now then, this friend, Gail, we'd been friends since we were both unsupported, working class, single mothers. We had supported each other through years of all sorts of sorrows and happiness and, sorry to say a cliche, but trials and tribulations and the whole lot. And we both studied because we knew we wanted a future, etc., etc. She had 2 children, I had 4. And, I trusted Gail implicitly. And I could see that morning that I was painting that she was getting more and more upset and agitated as the morning wore on. And it was puzzling because she wouldn't tell me why. And given our history, I was very surprised. Anyway, I thought, well, maybe it was better to leave her alone. So I finished the job, left. And then she came round to my house a couple of days later. More like herself, cheerful, bright, and that. And why she'd been upset was because she'd been found to be earning money aside from the monies that she declared for tax purposes. And she was to appear in court for tax fraud. When she got to court, it had been suggested if she went to a meeting in the town hall, they would drop the charges and she wouldn't have to appear. So, of course, she went to the meeting. But Gail didn't tell me what the meeting had been about. But she had asked for my house title deeds. I'd never had a mortgage on my house. I bought it cash in 1998. And I've bought it cash as working class people do. They buy and sell properties, do them up, make a bit of profit, plough it into another one, and that's how I'd survived. Anyway, that was that. But as I said, she did not tell me what the meeting had been about. I found out eventually the meeting where I'd been asked where Gail, would she pass over my house title deeds and they would leave her alone. And Gail had handed them my house title deeds. This is the theft of my house. Now, there is another story as to how they knew Gail was making money extra to what she declared. But of course, you know, unless you've got a week to spare. And if I'd had a mortgage, I'd have been more secure. But anyway, I didn't have, so she'd handed over my title deeds. I've never spoken to Gail since, which is a great sadness because we've been such friends for so long. But that's how it goes. And then, of course, I go home one evening. I don't know, I'm probably staying with one of my daughters, and I'd gone home one evening. The locks had been changed. Now, when I'd had over time, when I was doing the house up, it was a period 1930s, which I love, and I'd had some very nice double glazing to match the house. I had not had the front door done because stained glass period front door, and I had not had the kitchen window done or the back door, which led into the kitchen and out to the back garden, because they were period. They were too good to have replaced by even good double glazing. So I knew there was a problem with the kitchen window, that if I could work it loose from its latch, I could climb in and see what the hell was going on. And so I'm with this particular daughter who was very slender. You know, she was slimmer than me. So she was going to be able to get in through the window if I managed to open it. So we're working on this window. Voices, torchlight. Halt! Who are you? It was my neighbours. My neighbours were wonderful. Sunnyside Lane is a cul-de-sac. There are very few houses, very quiet area, leads off to allotment in Lancaster, but not far from the train station. And it was my neighbours. Well, one of the neighbours, she was even slimmer than my daughter and taller. I managed to open the window, she managed to climb in, and I knew the back door would have only been bolted because I'd left the original bolts on it. And I thought, well, they'll have bolted the back door and had the locks changed on the front door. And of course, they had just bolted the back door. So we all got in, and that was that. So the next day, the Gestapo were outside, sitting in the cars, because it was obvious that I was in the house. The neighbours said it was an AA locksmith who'd come to change the locks. I rang him up and asked him to come back and change them again. And he did. And he said, I've told them, without naming them, obviously, he just said, I've told them I want nothing to do with this. So that was AA locksmith. I changed my locks back, and that was fine. I regained my house. There was another attempt to take my house, and it failed. I assumed they couldn't get a locksmith or anybody. And all they did was drive up and down this very quiet cul-de-sac in the big black cars with the tinted windows. And one of the neighbours said, look, we're all afraid for ourselves now. I understood. My neighbours had been brilliant. But the third attempt, which I knew was coming, honestly, if you're involved in this sort of stuff, your instinct tells you.
Yeah.
You know, there are things that just warn you somehow. And I thought the third attempt would be successful. So I made contingency plans. I had a message if I gave over all my documents, they would leave the house alone. No, I don't do deals.
No.
So I took important things down to where they would be safe, and one or two personal things. But then it all went quiet. So I thought, oh, I could take things back home. And then I thought, no, there's something really going on here. So the state thugs arrive, smash the way into the house, smash all that lovely double glazing. They wanted to make sure I couldn't live in my lovely house. Now, I did take photographs of every room in the house, but I can't bear to look at them. And so I just had to go and stay with a daughter. And then, of course, they start on my daughter. So I just end up moving around here, there, and everywhere, around to different friends. The black social worker I supported through her problem with racism, she was led to a breakdown in that, by the way, and I did get the Race Relations Board and a solicitor for her in the end, but she did have a breakdown. She did recover. She never went back to that place to work. She had a nursing background, but very sadly, I mean, we became very best friends. She did die nearly 2 years ago of cancer, so I do miss her. Anyway, she was very supportive. I could go and stay with her. I had different friends here and there. Not a great many friends, but good friends. One by one, they were got at one way or another. Threats or bribes. But I had travelled, I mean, literally the country. Within all that time, I was pursuing private prosecutions. And anywhere anything happened, I put in a claim to make a private prosecution. And I was in one court, Sheffield, and the judge actually said, I can't understand how you've been left with this on your own. This will go to a full hearing. So I went back for the full hearing thinking, oh, this is going to be good. Because usually I was insulted, derided, demeaned, anything to get me out of court because they've been tapped on the shoulder. Get rid of her. I went back and he was completely different. He'd been tapped on the shoulder, shouting at me, mocking, derision, all the rest of it. And I just thought, oh, well, it's all I'm used to. So I got absolutely nowhere with private prosecutions. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping about here because there was so much going on. But anyway, back to the house. So the house is, thousands of pounds worth of damage done. And it was lovely. I mean, even though I said it myself, it was lovely. And my photographs show that. But when the thugs say, get out, it's ours, believe me, you get out. So travelling around here, there and everywhere. And then I'd heard there was an MP, Norman Baker, Liberal Democrats in Lewes. And I'd heard some talk or something he was giving. And I thought, oh, what a good man. And I'd copied him and one or two others, people who were ministers of particular positions that should have at least asked questions. Mind you, they probably did. But anyway, and I actually got a message from Norman Baker. He was interested, but he couldn't help me because I wasn't a constituent. Well, I'd nowhere else to live, so I went to Lewes, got a bed and breakfast for 2 nights, prayed I would find a room to rent. So, in a newsagent's postcard, Janice Bournan, I think it was 7 Northway, Lewes, room to let. So I went to look, and it was a lady about my age, and she was looking after her parents who were elderly but not infirm. And they had a 3rd bedroom, 3-bedroom semi. The 3rd bedroom was for rent. Fine. All in this time, by the way, I wasn't claiming any sort of benefits or any monies. No, this was one of my contingency plans that was working. So I moved into the room, went down to Norman Baker's office, saw the receptions. There was 2 in reception. And, oh, yeah, they were, very nice, very pleasant, very helpful. Yes. Appointment to meet Norman Baker. So I went to meet Norman Baker and I said, I am a constituent now because I'm renting a room in North Way. So he said, right. He said, you'll hear from me in a couple of weeks. So after about 3 days, I phoned my sister. I thought I'd better let at least somebody know where I am because to all intents and purposes, I've disappeared, except, of course, they hadn't disappeared from the state thugs. And she said, I've some news for you. She said, Gail's been round to Stephen's. He's got your title deeds. So that was Norman Baker's ball rolling. Oh, I was absolutely overjoyed. But I thought, well, how did Gail know where my brother lived? Because she knew which area he lived in Morecambe, but she didn't actually have his address. But anyway, she'd obviously been told where to go. So that was my house title deeds. So then I went back to make another appointment to see Norman Baker to tell him, you know, thanks, and I'm going to go north again, and I've got my title deeds now, so I've got something I can fight for. And the receptionists were completely different, unhelpful, aggressive, abusive. They were not going to make me another appointment. So then the Gestapo move in again. And I end up having been carted. They love picking me up on the street, by the way, because that's the best way to make me disappear. I ended up in Chorley Mental Hospital. Apparently my deeds, but no, they're a figment of my imagination. I've just made it up. And if I've got anything, they're just copies. There was also a particular letter that apparently I hadn't got. Again, that was something else I'd made up. So I'm in Chorley Hospital, mental hospital, because I'm a nutcase, by the way. And I was being interviewed by a Gillian Harrison. Believe me, she knew less about medical matters than I did. She was police sent to try and get information from me. What they've always wanted were the documents, and they weren't going to get them. I mean, without my documents, I would come across as a complete nutcase. Then I was interviewed by a psychiatrist, Subramanian, and she was nervous, she was edgy. It was almost like I was interviewing her. So I thought, I'm going to check her out as soon as I can. And of course, they discharged me because they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And I checked
They do
her.
that to try and get you under the Mental Health Act.
Yeah, but I'm not the only one, Steve. No, Len Lawrence, pilot, whistleblower, they're trying to do exactly the same with him.
Absolutely, yeah.
Except, you know, I mean, not to the same extent that I've had the experiences, but near enough. And I checked Subramanian out. She'd actually been struck off for murdering a patient Christmas Eve 2008 in that very hospital. So, I mean, I reported that. I've reported stuff to the Parliamentary Health Ombudsman and, you know, totally. I didn't have one single agency who either responded or would help. Not one, anywhere. Not a court, nobody. The best person up to that point was Norman Baker. But I'd had 14 wrongful arrests and false imprisonments. I was never told what I'd done. I was in one interview encouraged, in inverted commas, to say for the tape that I was happy and well in one police station. I've been in just about every single police station in the country. And
how are you now then? Because we're going to have to wrap up soon.
Yes.
So what's the current situation now? Are you any further forward?
The situation is I met the last time they tried to say I was mentally ill. My paths crossed with somebody else who was on leave from work with PTSD. He was far more powerful than this lot I deal with. And he talked to me and I let him talk. And he said to me, you're the only person I've met I can talk to. And then he said, well, what about you? He was actually asking, he was interested. What about me? So I told him a bit. And then I saw him again the next day and he said, I have made a phone call. A ball is rolling. Boy, was a ball rolling. I get home and my car, my lovely, trusty car, outside the bungalow that I'm now in, after refusing the first one because that came with a deal. If I accepted this bungalow and lost my memory, they might leave me alone. That was Jeff Marsland, who was then a city councillor. I sent Jeff back with a message. I don't want the bungalow. And there's nothing wrong with my memory. And I was living in my car at the time. And they did eventually offer me this place in Kate, which I've settled down there. I quite like it. I have got a garden.
That's good.
And you just sort of accept these things. I said it's the fatalism of the working classes. Anyway, I got home and my lovely car, it was completely wrecked, just as they'd done to my house. Every bit of glass had been smashed. The license plates had been pulled off and thrown in the road. Windscreen wipers pulled off, thrown. Anything they could do to it, they had done to it. Now, the attempts to force me off the motorway on various occasions, all the dents and things of all those, I've never had prepared because, that was my evidence that they tried to ram me. And I did nothing. I just phoned up a local scrap dealer, Ken Allen in Morecambe, who's been there forever. He came, they cleared everything up. I did not claim on my insurance. How on earth could I explain how my car had been damaged on an insurance claim? I didn't claim. And Ken Allen gave me £78 scrap value. 5 of the worst offending people who had harassed shouted at me, get out of Kate, and all that sort of stuff for, quite a long time. They'd all been moved. And not one single person has ever said to me, what happened to your car? Anyway, so that's a period over. But can I just say, when Daisy May visited me in Lancaster and parked her car outside my house, and we walked into town, when we walked back, somebody had painted racist slogans all over it. And the second time she came, they'd rammed her car just to damage it. But basically, because of the fuss I kicked up when they first went for Daisy May was the only black social worker in the building. Well, she was a social work assistant. She was the only black person in the building. And I don't know why, but anyway, they're just a bunch of racists, most of them. They didn't actually go after her in harassment and just nuisances and all the rest of it. I think they'd had, they knew what we were capable of between us, should they have sort of started on Daisy May. So really, she was the last friend I had that was trustworthy, hadn't been bribed, hadn't been threatened, and the damage to her car, well, she just sort of shrugged it off. But I mean, we're talking also about false bank accounts, like Santander contacting me with my email. How on earth did they know my email apart from anything else? There were thousands of pounds waiting for me from my father's estate. Would I go and collect it? So I just wrote back, I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never banked with you. My dad's never banked with you. I said, he's been dead 40 years because he died young of cancer. I said, and I don't want it. But they tried, similar with the nationwide furnace bill. They think I'm stupid. They think I'm going to, or greedy. I'm not interested in money.
No, you at the end of the day, you just want justice.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, it's been lovely to speak with you.
Finally.
I'm going to have to wrap it up more so because of the background noise.
Of course you are. On for a week, I told you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm happy to revisit this, but maybe just over a phone, or if you can find somewhere less chaotic behind you.
I know. Well, I say yesterday I booked a little room, but it's not free today.
That's such a shame.
That was a problem. Yeah. No. And not to worry. It's how things.
Thank you so much for your time and for telling me your story, and thank you for being you and doing the right thing, because we need more people like that in today's society, for sure.
I do think, I mean, somebody said, do you regret doing what you've done? And I said, no, I don't think so, because I would never have stopped thinking about it had I not done something.
Absolutely. No, brilliant. Well, I hope everyone else has managed to hear everything okay. It's mind blowing again as to how much corruption is in the very places you expect to have people to have your backs, and it just isn't the case. But for now, look after yourselves, take care, and
Yeah,
I'll speak to you
and
all
you. Yeah.
again.
Okay. Thanks for
Thank you
your
very
time.
much.
Bye.
Bye.